Hello and welcome to the next episode of the Sound Design Here Create series, Project 2, Bloom and Wilt, Episode 2, Life Cycle. So let's quickly recap what we're doing here today. Sound Design Here Create is a sound design series where we undertake a series of projects, each of which is supposed to drive us towards doing some sound design. Those are motivated by prompts. In this case, the prompt is from this flower image. And the prompt is as follows. Here is a flower. Create the sound of it blooming, then wilting. Along with this image, we have a time lapse of a flower, which we looked at last episode, and we discussed how we translate that into sound. So I'll recap. Firstly, I noticed that the head of the flower raises and at the very end it falls. So I would like that to reflect some sort of pitch movement here. Additionally, the flower has concentric rings of petals, like ranks, and I was thinking that each one of them, the wider ones, could be wide in the stereo spectrum, and the inner ones could be narrow in the stereo spectrum. Additionally, the color seems to be different on the inner ranks versus the outer, so I'd like some sort of timbral variation between those. Next, I noticed that the petals sort of evolve from an immature form through to the mature form, and then they eventually wilt. So I wanted to reflect that movement. My thinking here was that they could start more timbrally simple, almost a sine wave, add timbral complexity as the petals mature, and then as the petals eventually begin to wilt, then I can start moving out some of that pitched element and replacing it with just a noise, almost like a breathy sound, like an exhalation. So let's start on this. What we did last week is we took the base station 2 and we made a placeholder sound just to give us a feel for how it worked. Well, today I've got the Novation Peak synthesizer and I'm going to hopefully make the final sound. But I'm not going to make the final sound ready to go on the video. I'm going to make a patch which will become part of that final sound. If you remember, last episode I manually modulated parameters as the sound was playing. This episode I will probably manually modulate parameters to demonstrate what I'm thinking, but I'm going to save the patch, and then next episode I'm going to draw in automations in a DAW to get much tighter alignment with what's going on in the video. Rather than manually automate each of the parameters on the panel, I'm going to pick a couple of macro parameters, large-scale parameters, so I only need to do a couple of automations. I think what those are going to be is the mod wheel and aftertouch, and I'll probably also automate the filter. One of the things to note is that though the Peak supports polyphonic aftertouch, my only polyphonic aftertouch controller is the Microfreak, which is a little bit quirky. Additionally, since I want to be able to very specifically manually control each of the shapes of the evolving sound, I'm going to do that by taking multiple recordings. So polyphonic aftertouch isn't critical here. So what's actually going to happen is channel aftertouch, or channel pressure as it's called, there'll basically be one value per take, and that will reflect which of the ranks that this corresponds to. So let's get started here. Let's make an initialized patch. Last time I was working with triangle waves because there wasn't really a wave shape parameter on the base station, but on the Peak I have wave shaping parameters. So what I've done here is I've set them all to sine wave. This is going to be my fundamental pitch, and what I've got is a sort of sub-oscillator sound and a super oscillator sound. And I'm going to combine the three of those to give the sort of timbre that I'm looking for initially. So at the moment these are all turned down, so all I'm hearing is the fundamental. Now I'm going to turn up the sub-oscillator just so I can hear it. I'm going to turn the super oscillator up. Now I'm going to bring in some ring mod. Now I'm going to detune these a little bit. So let's turn them a fraction. And I guess on the subject of detune, I think what I'll do is I'll go into the oscillator controls and I'll turn on a little bit of diverge and a bit of drift and a bit of filter divergence. So this is going to make these tunings of the oscillators relative to one another and the voices relative to one another and the filters relative to one another change over time. In addition to the ranks having different timbre, I think I'd like to play them on different notes. So my thinking here is that I might play them ascending in fourths. So let me latch some and just hear how it sounds. So let's experiment with the filter. I think the 12 dB filter makes more sense because it's a little bit softer. I'd like to hear it move a bit. So let's try a little resonance too. Let's experiment a little with the wave shape parameters here. So when I was talking about different timbres per rank, I think it might make sense to do something like that. Another thing I quite like the idea of is maybe turning drive against distortion to give a slight timbral shift. Another thing I notice is the higher notes sound a bit too bright. So what I might do is turn key tracking of the filter down a bit. So that will mean that ordinarily, as you go up the keyboard, the filter cutoff goes up to reflect that pitch increase. As you turn key tracking down, that happens less. So that's taken some of the brightness off of that high end there. I'll see what happens if I bring in some filter mod. Okay, so it's too aggressive. The smallest possible value sounds too strong, so I don't think I'll go for that. So I think what I'm going to do then is I'm going to try and use aftertouch to change the timbre to reflect the different ranks here, and I think the way those are going to change is the wave shapes of the oscillator are going to change, and I'm going to bring up the distortion and bring down the overdrive. Maybe I'll bring in a little more resonance, maybe I'll bring in a little more ring mod as well, so let me down a little. So I'm going to go into the mod matrix and I'm going to do that all with a direct source. So that means we'll hear the effect directly with the level that I set, but then when I change that to aftertouch source, aftertouch will change it, so then we can listen. So let's go. First, I wanted filter distortion, I wanted filter drive, I wanted oscillator 1 shape, oscillator 2 shape, oscillator 3 shape. I said ring mod level, and I said maybe filter resonance. So that's 7 mod slots taken. There are 16 slots available, so I've got 9 more slots plus an additional 4 for the effect section. So I'm not too worried about running out. But let's set the levels now. So first the distortion. Now let's turn down the drive. Oscillator 1 shape. Turn it way up just to see how it sounds. Turn it way down. Oscillator 2. oscillate to 3. These are much less obvious because the levels is much lower now. Ring mod. Filter resonance, not too much. So now I'm going to switch all these to aftertouch. So now let's test this out. Turn off latch. So hopefully you can hear just a bit brighter, a bit more timbrally interesting as we put the pressure down. So now when I go and make the mod wheel mapping for the evolution of the sound through time, I am going to remember that there's this aftertouch movement that's available. So we're going to have multiple layers of this in practice. But let's go to these mod wheel shaping first. So I think, firstly, though I'm going to shape this manually, I think I'm going to control it with the filter. I think it's good to have an envelope. So let's have an envelope. We don't want a super long tag. You can have a long decay. And what I'm actually going to be doing is controlling the sound by manually adjusting the filter cutoff. So obviously that's going to end up in the DAW. That's going to be an automation that we paint in. So we'll have 3 automation lanes. So with that open, first what I'd like to do is to bring noise in. So let me just bring the noise up. Now the noise is very, very bright. This is a white noise, but we actually have access to a high pass and a low pass filter for the noise. So first let's close the low pass filter, see if I need any high pass. I think we really do. So let's just... Okay, so this is the noise at about 50%. So let me turn that down. And now what I'm going to do is, let me latch this. I'm going to make the mod matrix in direct mode, open the noise to the level I want, and close up the other oscillators in the way that I want. And then I'm going to map those to the mod wheel, and then I'll have that animation. So first thing is oscillator 1 level. So 64 represents a full motion here. So I guess I can leave a tiny bit of it in. Let's go oscillator 2 level, oscillator 3 level. I think I'll leave the ring mod in just so there's something still there, and I won't necessarily... That's probably enough of it out. 3. And the ring mod level can stay. So now let's get to the noise level. So now these are going to be controlled by the mod wheel. So maybe that noise level's a bit high. Maybe the filter on it's a bit open. Actually, this filter is going to tame it. So I already have now a picture of what I'm imagining is going to happen here. We're going to be gradually raising the mod wheel as we open the filter. As the noise starts to come in, so I think I want to get a bit more of that pitch tone out of there. I want it to be almost gone completely. So let's revisit these levels. And maybe I'll also turn the ringworld level down a little. Okay, so that's tempered it a bit more. Maybe I'll bring a little more noise out. Okay, I think that's feeling a little bit better. So the animation is going to be opening the filter as I raise the mod wheel. And as the noise starts to come in, slowly lowering the filter. And it's going to drop all the way down. I think maybe I'd like a little bit more motion going on here. So what I might do is, though this is a stereo effect, I might bring some chorus in. Only a very small amount. And similarly, I might bring in some delay. So I want the time to be long enough that it doesn't come out pitched. Equally, I'm probably going to put in a small amount of reverb. So remember that I'm not really looking to make this wide stereo, I'm looking to make it relatively narrow. So for example, if I put this as a unison, it's sort of too bold, it's got too much going on, so I don't really want a unison here. But what I do want probably is this sequence of notes. So that will work, I think. So that's got fairly loud, so I might turn this mixer down a little. I might add a little bit of reverb on the mixer side. I might just adjust the EQ a little. So let's close this filter up. Let's get ready to try and do a run through of this here. So I'm going to be manually adjusting these parameters just to give us a feel for how this sound is going to work. It'll probably be a little out of balance and it shouldn't be played polyphonically like this, but hopefully it'll give us a taster. Okay, so the animation didn't quite line up, but I think the overall timbrel motion works. I think we'll have to fine tune the balance between the frequency cutoff and the mod wheel just to get the noise coming out just right. But I think that works. So what I'm going to do then is save this patch, and then next episode we'll come back. We will put some automations into a DAW, we will record some layers of audio, we'll do some more processing there, and hopefully put together the final audio for this project. I hope you've been enjoying this series. I hope you've been enjoying this project. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And most importantly, I'd like to say thank you very much for joining me today, and goodbye.